Good to have you all here. How many of you don't have this? Willie has an extra if you don't have one. Put your hand up.
Yes, I did have an extra.
Oh, you got them all given out?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you have to share then, I guess. You ready? Okay. Our lesson today, I'm going to do it like I do in Africa. I always use a map of consciousness, and I'll explain that a little bit. The lesson is about faith for success. And I've written down that a living faith has a positive effect on every aspect of our life, whether it's our business, whether it's our relationships, whether it's our relationship with God. And I underlined living because, you know, there's people who study and study and study, but they never put it into practice. And so it's like a shadow. It's not living. It's not doing anything for them. So in this map of consciousness, Dr. David Hawkins learned how to measure people's energy levels. And I think you all know, if you're in a room and somebody comes in the room who has very, very positive energy, you can feel the energy before they ever say anything. If somebody comes in the room and has negative energy, you feel that energy. And some people are more keen to that and some people are less keen. But he's got what's called the energetic log, and he measured this energy using Hertz, H-E-R-T-Z, which is a measurement of energy. And at the bottom of the energy scale are the people who live in shame. Maybe they've been abused, they've made really, really bad choices in their life, and so the energetic log says they're at 20 hertz. And their predominant emotional state is a state of humiliation. And their view of life is that it's miserable. And their view of God is that he despises them. Their process of life is the process of elimination. Now, these people can actually commit what's called involuntary suicide, because if they become ill, they don't even go to the doctor. I'm not worth going to the doctor. The world would be better off without me. That's their mindset. And if you take them to the doctor, they may or may not take their medication. I see these people in Africa. I'm driving down the road. I got permission from the base commander there. She's in charge of all the police to drive, and so I drive. And I'm driving down the road, and there's these people that are just stumbling along. They say they're drunk, but they've used glue. They sniff on glue, and I've done a little research, and somebody said that they last about 7 years, and their brain is completely fried, and they're stumbling along, and you got to watch for them. I mean, if you're not watching for them, they're going to eliminate. I don't think there's anybody here that's at that low of a level of energy, but I think you might know of someone if you think about it. So we're going to move up the scale here. Let's move up the scale to the energetic log of 100. And the name of that level is fear. The predominant emotional state is anxiety. Life is a little frightening. And your view of God is he's punitive, and our process of life is we're withdrawing. We're not going out and doing. We're not filling the purpose that God has for us. We're withdrawing. We're because we don't feel affirmation from God. And so as you move on up the scale at the highest level, before you get to the positive energy, these are all the negative energy zone. The highest level before you get into the positive, these people have accomplished something. They're really, really worked hard. They've put forth a lot of effort. The name of that level is pride. Their predominant emotional state is the state of scorn. If you all would do like I'm doing, you could have some success too, that attitude. Their view of life is they're very demanding. Their view of God is he's indifferent. And their process of life is they're inflating themselves. They're trying to look good. They're trying to drive the fancy vehicles. They're doing the things that make them look big to scare off competition. All right, here at 200 hertz is the name of this one is courage. And I love that because I've renamed it faith. And I think it takes faith to have courage, and it takes courage to walk in faith. And so at any stage down here, where you put your faith in Christ and you say, I've got a need in my life and I don't know how to fill it, but I believe. And believing isn't knowing. You know, some people say, if I could just know what God wants me to do, I could do that. If you could just write me out a book and I could follow the instructions. No, that's not how faith works. Faith is choosing to believe in a higher power and choosing to let go of my program for my life and allow God to direct me. And that takes courage to do that. But when you put your faith in God and you submit to God, it catapults you out of the negative energy zone and into the positive energy zone. All right, now let me explain how I illustrate this. So if positive energy is like a magnet, and this is the positive end, can you make the positive end connect with the negative end? No. It's going to push it apart. They're going to repel. Now, when you flip it around and you've got the negative end, can you make the negative end connect with the positive? No. They're going to repel. The negatives connect down here. Do they inspire each other? No. When two negatives get together, it just everything goes downhill from there. When two positives get together, your energy level comes up because you inspire each other. Now, this is the realm of inspiration. This is the realm of manipulation. The only way these people can get other people to do what they want them to do is to use force and fear. And so you see, in the in days gone by, when our life wasn't going as well as we wished it was, we said, I need to find God, let me go to church and find God. Nowadays, you have to be more careful because some of these churches are absolutely working in this realm here where they use fear to manipulate you to do what they want you to do. And recently in Kenya, there was a group there, and they call it Shakahola. He started it back in 2003, and slowly by slowly, he convinced these people that they shouldn't send their children to school. And that's often a characteristic of a devious religious organization is they don't want you to become educated because if you become educated, you start thinking and they lose control. It's all about control. They convinced him not to go to the hospital. And then one day he said, how would you like to all see Jesus? Oh, yeah, we want to see Jesus. He said, we can arrange that. He said, you just fast and pray and you'll see Jesus. And he took away their food and water. They got them all in the building, locked them in, took away their food and water, and of course they started dying. And every day he went in and drug out the dead and buried them out back. And by the time they caught him, there was over 100 people laying out there in these shallow graves. I think it's up to 300 and some now. And so the people of Kenya have recognized that churches have somewhat run their course. And it's like Dougal said in Sunday school, we come here for our convenience. We come here because this is a nice place to meet, but the kingdom of God is within you. And we're sailing through a world of lies and deceit. And the media is corrupt. Our justice system is corrupt. And this isn't just in the U.S., this is worldwide. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the truth? How do I know? And so how do I know how to get through this life in such a way that I can fill my purpose, I can have success in all the different areas, 4 primary areas of life: spiritual, physical, emotional, and financial. And so you know, I was reading the Bible personally one day, and I'd been in this mind for months. How do I even know what truth is? Because this one says this thing is truth, and this one says this thing is truth, and they're not agreeing. And this one says, well, you have to be baptized this way, and this one says, you know, it goes on and on and on. And so all of a sudden, I read there John 14:6, and it says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I thought, wow, Jesus is the truth. And so as we accept him into our lives, and we begin to live like Jesus, and we let him guide our lives, that truth begins to guide us. It's no longer I, but Christ who lives through me. And your study notes, number 1, And I'm not going to read all these verses because I normally spend about 40 minutes giving a presentation, and I'm squeezing this down. So if you want to have more tools in your toolbox to learn how to raise your energy level, live a better life, a more successful life, you can look these verses up at home. Now, if you're not interested, I can't force you to do that anyway. So it doesn't really matter what my presentation is, because if you're not interested, if somebody doesn't want to learn, nobody can force you to learn. But if you want to learn, nobody can keep you from learning. That's kind of how that works. And when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Now, I may just give you a tool, but tomorrow, when you say, you know what, I think I could live a more successful life. I've had some challenges that I haven't known how to overcome. I've got some addictions that I don't know how to overcome. But I think there's enough, your level of awareness can come up. And so as I thought about all this, and I talked over with Butch, I said, you know, if you were born in the slum, like where my restaurant is in Kenya, they tell me Kipsongo was started by I think it was the Turkana people years ago, and that's a slum area of Kitale. And it's near the Kitale Technical College. That's why the restaurant's there, is because we wanted to target that group of people. And then eventually more and more people moved into those slums, and they said as recently as 15 years ago, there weren't even really clearly defined families. And so now it has, I'm going to say civilized for lack of a better word, it has civilized to that point where there are more clearly defined families. But if you've grown up in that setting, you don't know anything any different. You have to become aware, you know what? I could have a better life. I could know who my daddy is, and he could take care of me, and he could pay my school fees, and all these things. So number one is we have to have an awareness. How do we get that awareness? We may get it by studying the Bible, because the Bible is a great source of inspiration and also examples of people who have a living faith. And you can see in the Bible where they went from being, like Butch said last week, from being useless to useful, because they connected, they believed, and they connected. Another way that people can connect is observing another believer. And it might be as simple as when Sheila, was talking to her fellow teachers, and she said, would it be okay if I prayed with you? See, we don't know what effect that has, even having today. And we don't know what effect these boys going out and doing an honest day's job is having. People are saying, oh, these boys are different than other boys. They're not trying to take advantage of us. I wonder why. Because the last boy I got to mow my lawn or put my window in, he tried to rip me off. And these boys, so then they ask him, why are you different? And they say, we have living faith. We're connected. And so another one might be a missionary or a leader of some type, and we can all be missionaries. We're either missionaries or mission fields, somebody told us. But I was thinking of a little illustration, and last week it was homecoming for me, and people were congratulating me and all that stuff, and I said, I got to ride this horse as long as I can ride it. And I think I told somebody. But anyway, so, these little boys, these little group of boys, somebody says, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be like my daddy, I want to be a farmer. And another one says, well, I want to be like my daddy, I want to be a policeman. And another one says, well, I want to be a firefighter. And one little boy, he had another awareness moment, and he thought a little bit, and he says, I want to be a returning missionary. There was something there that he had never seen before, and he liked it. Now, that didn't mean he knew all the steps. You have to be a leaving missionary, and you have to get sick, and you have to do all those things to be a returning missionary. But we have to come to a higher level of awareness. And so we avail ourselves of that. We go to church, we go to seminars, we study the Bible, and another one can be spiritual illumination. And so number two which is directly from God. Maybe one day we're questioning, why do I have this problem in my life, and what can I do to overcome it? and you're just kind of silently praying, even though, your eyes aren't closed, and you're driving down the road, and all of a sudden, God illuminates your mind, and you have that aha moment. The light bulb comes on, and you say, whoa, if I would do this different, I'd get a different outcome. Number 2 on our study notes is honesty of heart. And my consulting coach said, most of us don't really want to know the truth. We want confirmation for what we have chosen to believe as the truth. And so it's a hard challenge for us as humans to really accept the truth about my situation and to really move from a dead faith that is only knowing about Jesus to living a faith where Jesus is living through me. And we actually have a positive change in our life because of our connection. But when we actually connect by faith, because that's the only way we can connect, our life can redirect. Now, another challenge with religion is some people teach what's called mandated outcomes. This happens and your life changes. It's like you flip the light switch. Now, I'm not saying that can't happen. In some cases, it does happen. But often, it's more of a process outcome. We start the journey of what I call the journey of restoration. And we make intentional changes. And then when we slip up and fall, we don't throw ourselves away. We say, God, I messed up, kind of like King David. I messed up, I did that. What caused me to mess up? What can I do next time when I get into that situation so that I have a different outcome? And we began to pray, and we began to search, and we began to ask God. And we have to believe that when we come to God, He is the rewarder of those who diligently seek. And there's so many other areas of life where we learn by making our mistakes. And I remember very clearly, I was probably 55 when I got that lesson. And so I want you to have this tool in your toolbox earlier. But God all of a sudden said one day, He said, Stuart, have you always done everything perfect in your farming operation? And I said, no. He said, what about your agricultural business? No. What about your construction business? No. He said, so you learned by mistakes? I said, yeah. He said, it's okay. You can learn by your mistakes spiritually. I mean, the worst thing you can do is just do nothing for fear that I'm going to make a mistake. Because are you accomplishing anything if you do nothing? No, absolutely not. So number 3 is to connect by faith. Faith isn't knowing. Faith is choosing to believe. And it's characterized by experiencing a faith that works instead of a faith and works. And so many of these religious organizations nowadays, they teach, well, you got to have faith in Jesus, but you got to do this work. And you got to have my approval. You see how that works? They begin that process of manipulation and intimidation and domination, and it's all about control. And so when we think about finding freedom from oppression, it's not about having a middleman that we answer to in that. Now, middlemen are necessary from the standpoint that if they're bringing you inspirational from the positive energy level, inspirational thoughts and giving you tools and pointing you to the power source. But it's like one of the men, a friend of mine from Sedalia, he said, I can watch some television evangelists, and he said, I know in 2 minutes which energy level they're coming out of. They're either saying, come to me, give me your money, and I've got your answer. Or they're saying, let me show you who has the answer. And we'll pool our money and do something for him. And so you see the difference. Number 4, just another tool for your toolbox. We're forgiven. It's a double forgiveness. We're forgiven by God when we forgive our neighbor. And it says, forgive us as we forgive others. So, do you know what you're telling God when you say that? Forgive me my debts as I forgive. I'm going to forgive Jason, but I ain't never going to talk to him again. Is that how we want God to forgive us? He's going to forgive us, but he's never going to talk to us again. It's not going to work very well, is it? Now, In certain situations, we have to set healthy boundaries. My consulting coach also said the amount of psychopaths is on the rise in the U.S. He claims it's now 1 in 25 is a psychopath. Now we do know that it's a personality disorder. They don't have empathy. They don't feel pain when they hurt someone. They don't feel your pain. And his analysis is because businesses become more difficult and more challenging, people have learned, or they think, this is what I have to do for success. I have to run over this guy, I have to run over this one, and I don't allow myself to feel their pain. It's just what you do in business. And so you can see that doesn't represent Christ. Plus, it doesn't give us a very good life. So, if you're involved with someone who has a personality disorder, you forgive them, you love them, but you set some healthy boundaries to where they can't control you, and they don't come between you and your relationship with God. Number 5 is charity. We learn to, okay, let me just give you a personal experience. When I was driving over there, at first it was very frustrating because they don't have traffic lights. We drive on the other side of the road. The motorcycle guys, some of them don't have driver's licenses, some don't have licenses. You're driving along, one's passing you on this side, one's passing you on this side, and the bus is turning in front of you here. And I was like, this is stupid. And I experienced some rage. And I said, God, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to be a missionary with this much hate in my heart. But I acknowledged it. And it's kind of like, since then, I've taken a whole different view of it. And I said, I'm not going to change all these people. I'm going to change. And so now I drive with anticipation. And Eunice has told me, she said, just remember, in Kenya, you're the only sane driver. She said, when you have that mindset that you're the only sane driver, it works a lot better. So now, you don't watch your phone at all, and you develop your peripheral vision, but you're driving, and you kind of see this guy over here, and you know his intentions. You see this one over here, you know their intentions. You see this guy walking across the street, and you begin to flow. And it's kind of exciting. I kind of enjoy it. I come up to the corner and you don't have to stop. You just flow in. So you can choose to be frustrated, or you can choose to be fascinated by people and by life. And when rage comes up inside, it's kind of like this preacher I was listening to on YouTube, and he said, all of a sudden he was going through a situation. He said, I had rage. And I said, God, what the world's going on? I've never had this kind of rage. He said, God said, look at your wedding ring. He said, how many carats of gold is that? He said, well, it's 14 carats. He said, well, if it was pure, it'd be 24 carats. So what's the other 10 carats? He said, well, I suppose it's some kind of a filler. He said, if you would put this under extreme heat, what would happen? He said, well, the impurities would come to the top. He said, if you'll own your impurities, I'll skim them off for you, and it becomes more pure. But if you blame the other guy because of your rage, it just goes back into the mix, and it's going to come up again. It's going to come up again. And so if you recognize, I've got depression, and you say, God, there's depression in my life. Will you skim it off for me? This isn't helping me fill your purpose. I've got rage in my life. I've got whatever it is in my life that's not Christ-like, and I take responsibility. And you allow God to skim it off. Number 6, transformation/sanctification. And Butch has taught this so well. The difference between justification, when we accept Christ initially, and we're justified by faith, and then sanctification, when we learn how to walk in Christ, this process outcome that I was talking about. And so, whatever we expose ourselves to will affect us. Remember that in the sanctifying process, when you're sailing through this ocean of lies and deceit, where are you getting your information from? Are you getting it from the newspaper, or are you getting it from the Bible? Are you know, Google, I'm told, they're manipulating history now. So when you Google something, it may not be like it was in the history books 40 years ago. AI, I think, is going to be the same thing. It's just so simple. You get on there, you say blah, 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 this question, that question. It pops up the answer. Oh, okay, that's the truth. I know it's the truth because I saw it on Facebook. Or Google. All right, you got the point there. And number 7, aligning. When you try to align with God's will. And you ask yourself at the beginning of the day, and you know, my devotional time is so different than it used to be. I wake up in the morning, I may have an inspiration. I just go out and sit on the couch and just do nothing. I just listen. You know, prayer is us talking to God, but inspiration is Him talking to us. And pretty soon a verse comes. And I look that verse up. And I may find another verse on the way to this verse. And I start to get, like I've spent all week on this little lesson. And I've had it laid out on my kitchen table. And I come out in the morning and I look it over. And Butch and I wrote it up. He wrote it for me the other evening. And he said, we'll just not make any copies until you're finished. He's got experience, right? And so the next day, you know, in the morning, I looked at it and I said, it's done. By afternoon, I said, no, we need to make a change. This morning he called me at 6 o'clock. He said, is there any more changes? I said, yeah, there's one more. So even in all of this, we still trust that God is going to use His Spirit to speak. I can do the best I can do. We can make all the changes we want to make, but it's still God's Spirit that inspires us. And the other thing, I see I'm out of time, but the other thing the little illustration that I wanted to use is, if you would put your hands out like this and clench your fists, what can you receive? You can't receive anything. It's going to run off. But supposing you begin to release, and that's what happens is when we let go of negative things in our life. Supposing we would release disappointment. We all have disappointments, and we'd say, I'm going to accept that. Whether it's my health, whether it's my talents or lack of talents, whatever, I'm going to release it. I'm going to be who you want me to be. I'm going to release my disappointments. I'm going to release my pain. The people who have hurt me. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to release my need for control. Because we all want to control our life. Control has its roots in fear. And we say, what am I going to lose if I do what God wants me to do? And so we try to control our life. What about if we would release our need for the approval of people? That's a big one. God says, why don't you go here and do this, say this to this person? Yeah, but what are they going to think of me? Why don't you do this, give this amount of money, go help this person mow their lawn? But I have other things I want to do. Release that. When God speaks to you, when He inspires you. And the last one, release my need to know what the outcome will be. You know, sometimes God says, He inspires us and He said, I want you to do this. And you say, but what will the outcome be? Let it go. Let it go. Now what can I receive? I can receive everything. Love, joy, peace, freedom from oppression, all those things. And so when we think about moving from the negative energy scale to the positive energy scale, if you want to move down, it's very simple. Just live a lie. Tell a lie or live a lie. Try to be somebody, try to portray yourself as somebody you're not. Because when you do that, you're going to have fear because somebody's going to find you out. You're going to have guilt because you know this isn't really who I am. And you're going to have shame. So the opposite works with going to the top of the scale. Just be authentic. Say, hey, I'm kind of a train wreck, but I'm glad for Jesus because when I accept Him by faith, He gives me righteousness. And, you know, you may say, I mean, you're selective who you talk to, but you say, I've got this problem that I'm dealing with. And they say, yeah, you guys believe it or not, I had that problem one time too. But when you hold on to that, and try to pretend like, hey, everything's okay, I'm looking good. We don't get help because we don't admit we have a need. Another thing is to let go of the pain of life. Let go of the disappointments. Forgive people. And you can come up to another level. And choose to live in love. When we choose to live in love, let me tell you what's going to happen. There's going to be some unlovable people come into your life. That's just the way it works. But you choose to say, that's who they are, but that's not who I am in Christ. I have the love of God in my heart. I'm going to show them the love of God. It doesn't matter what they do. They don't project their life onto me. Christ could go into anywhere. They didn't rub off on him. He rubbed off on them. May God bless us as we put a few more tools in our toolbox to live a life of living faith. Thank you.